What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses walks onto a daytime talk show expecting a normal interview, only to be blindsided by a host who seems determined to tear her down on live television? In just 45 seconds, a simple question about her latest film project would spiral into one of the most shocking confrontations in British daytime TV history, exposing the ugly side of celebrity interviews and leaving viewers absolutely stunned. Kate Winslet had arrived at the Loose Women studios that morning with nothing but good intentions. She was there to promote her new film, to chat about her career, maybe share a few laughs with the panel. The Oscar-winning actress had done countless interviews before. She knew how these things worked. She was a professional, but nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. The show started normally enough. The cameras rolled, the audience applauded, and Kate took her seat on the famous Loose Women couch. She looked radiant in a simple but elegant navy blue dress, her hair styled naturally, her smile genuine and warm. Denise Welch sat directly across from her, flanked by panelists Nadia Sawalha, Kay Adams, and Jane Moore. The energy felt slightly off from the beginning. There was a tension in the air that Kate couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the way Denise was looking at her, with an expression that seemed less welcoming and more calculating. Maybe it was the way the other panelists seemed unusually quiet during the pre-show pleasantries. Whatever it was, something felt different. But Kate pushed those thoughts aside and smiled warmly, ready to engage in what she thought would be a friendly conversation about her work and her passion for storytelling. Denise opened with what seemed like a standard question, though there was something in her tone that already felt loaded. "Kate, lovely to have you here. Now, your new film has been getting quite a bit of attention. Tell us about it." Kate's face lit up. This was easy territory. This was what she'd come here to discuss. She leaned forward slightly, her enthusiasm genuine and infectious. "Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. Yes, the film is something I'm incredibly proud of. It's a story about a woman finding her voice after years of being silenced by the people around her, by society's expectations, by her own fears and doubts. And I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people, especially women who have felt invisible or unheard at different points in their lives. The character goes through this incredible journey of self-discovery and empowerment, and getting to portray that arc was truly one of the highlights of my career." But before Kate could continue expanding on her character's journey, Denise cut her off with a sharp tone that made the entire studio tense up. The warmth drained from the room in an instant. Finding her voice? That's interesting, because some people might say, "You've never really struggled to have your voice heard, have you? I mean, you've been privileged your entire career. You've never had to fight for anything. It's all been handed to you on a silver platter from day one, hasn't it?" The other panelists shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the direction any of them had expected the interview to take. Nadia looked down at her notes, clearly trying to figure out how to redirect the conversation. Kay glanced nervously between Denise and Kate, her expression one of growing concern. Jane's eyebrows shot up in surprise, and she opened her mouth as if to say something, but then closed it again, seemingly unsure how to intervene. The audience fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop in that studio. This wasn't the playful banter they'd come to expect from Loose Women. This wasn't the lighthearted celebrity chat they'd tuned in to watch. This was something else entirely. Something uncomfortable. Something that felt wrong. Kate's smile faltered slightly, confusion washing over her features. She blinked a few times, as if trying to process what she'd just heard. Her hands, which had been gesturing animatedly moments before, now rested still in her lap. She maintained her composure, but you could see the wheels turning in her mind, trying to understand where this sudden hostility was coming from. "I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Every actor faces challenges in this industry, regardless of their background or where they come from. The path to success is different for everyone, but it's rarely as simple as it might look from the outside." Denise leaned forward, her body language aggressive, her voice dripping with condescension and barely concealed contempt. "Oh, come on, Kate. Let's be honest here. Let's stop pretending. You went to drama school, didn't you? A proper drama school with resources and connections. You came from a family of actors. Your parents were in the business. You had connections from birth. Some of us had to actually work for everything we've got. Not everyone gets handed success on a silver platter. Not everyone has their career mapped out for them before they even leave school. Some of us had to scratch and claw our way up from nothing, with no help, no connections, no safety net. So excuse me if I find it a bit hard to swallow when you talk about finding your voice and overcoming obstacles." The personal attack hung in the air like a toxic cloud, poisoning the atmosphere of the entire studio. Kate's expression shifted from confused to visibly hurt. Her eyes widened slightly, and for a moment she looked like she'd been physically struck. She took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling as she clearly tried to process what was happening and formulate an appropriate response. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but you could hear the emotion beneath it, the pain of being so profoundly misunderstood and mischaracterized. "Denise, I'm really not sure where this is coming from, but I need to correct some serious misconceptions you seem to have about my life. Yes, I went to drama school, but I worked incredibly hard to get there. I auditioned multiple times. I was rejected multiple times. My family wasn't wealthy. We lived in a small flat in Reading. My parents were working actors, which means they spent more time looking for work than actually working. We struggled. There were times when we didn't know how we'd pay the rent. I've earned everything in my career through hard work, dedication, and yes, a fair amount of luck. But it certainly wasn't handed to me." Nadia tried to intervene, her voice gentle but firm, her expression one of genuine concern for both Kate and for the show itself. "I think what Kate is trying to say, and what's important for us to understand, is that everyone's journey is different, and we shouldn't compare our struggles or make assumptions about what someone else has been through. We don't know." But Denise wasn't having it. She wasn't interested in hearing alternative perspectives or in letting the conversation be steered back to safer ground. She cut Nadia off mid-sentence with a wave of her hand and a sharp shake of her head. "No, Nadia. I think we need to have this conversation. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of celebrities coming on this show and pretending they're just like everyone else when they're clearly not. I'm tired of the fakeness and the pretense. Kate, you live in a mansion, don't you? Multiple properties, probably. You wear designer clothes that cost more than most people earn in a month. You've won an Oscar, for goodness sake. You're about as far from ordinary as a person can get. You're not relatable, and it's insulting when you pretend to be. It's insulting to every woman watching this show who is struggling to make ends meet, who is working 2 jobs just to feed her kids, who can't afford to take a day off work when she's sick. Don't stand there and tell us you understand their struggles." The other panelists looked absolutely horrified. This had gone so far beyond normal television discourse that they seemed frozen, unable to fully comprehend what they were witnessing. Kay tried to lighten the mood, tried to salvage something from this disaster. Her voice was higher than usual, strained with the effort of maintaining professionalism in the face of such chaos. "Well, I think Kate has always been quite down to earth in her interviews, hasn't she? She's known for being genuine and honest and approachable. I've watched her interviews over the years, and she's always come across as someone who is very grounded despite her success. I think that's actually one of the things people appreciate about her, and..." Denise turned on Kay with barely concealed irritation, her face flushing red with anger or embarrassment or some toxic combination of both. "Are you seriously defending this right now, Kay? Are you seriously sitting there and telling me that I'm wrong for pointing out the obvious? This is exactly the problem with celebrity culture. This is exactly what I'm talking about. We put these people on pedestals and then we act surprised when they're completely out of touch with reality. We make excuses for them. We defend them when they don't need defending because they've got teams of people doing that for them already. They've got publicists and agents and managers all telling them how wonderful they are, and then they come on shows like this and we're supposed to join the chorus. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do that. Someone needs to tell the truth. Kate sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her posture straight and dignified, even as she was being verbally assaulted on live television. Her voice when she spoke was measured and controlled, but you could hear the emotion beneath it, simmering just below the surface, threatening to break through, but held back by sheer force of will and years of professional training. Denise, I came here today to talk about a film that means a great deal to me. A film about empowerment and resilience, and finding strength in the face of adversity. I didn't come here to be attacked for my career or my success. I didn't come here to have my life story rewritten by someone who doesn't know me. I've worked for over 30 years in this industry. 30 years. That's 3 decades of auditions and rejections and putting myself out there and being told I'm not thin enough or pretty enough or talented enough. I've faced rejection more times than I can count. I've faced criticism from people who thought they knew better. I've had my body shamed by tabloids and commentators who felt entitled to judge my appearance. I've faced countless obstacles, both personal and professional. To sit here and have you dismiss all of that as privilege, to reduce my entire career and all my struggles to some kind of unfair advantage, is not only unfair, it's cruel. It's deeply, profoundly cruel. The audience began to murmur, the sound growing louder with each passing second. Some people were nodding in agreement with Kate, their faces showing sympathy and understanding. Others looked shocked by the entire exchange, as if they couldn't quite believe what they were witnessing. A few audience members were shaking their heads in disgust at Denise's behavior. The camera operators didn't know where to point their lenses. Should they focus on Kate's composed but clearly pained expression? On Denise's defensive posture? On the other panelists who looked like they wanted to be anywhere but there? On the audience members who were visibly upset? This had gone completely off script. This was television history in the making, but not in a good way. Denise scoffed, actually scoffed out loud, and shook her head dismissively. The sound was harsh and mocking, and it made several audience members gasp. Cruel? You want to talk about cruel? What's cruel is actors like you making millions upon millions of pounds, while ordinary people, real people, can barely afford to heat their homes or put food on the table. What's cruel is coming on shows like this and acting like you understand the struggles of everyday women when you haven't had a real problem in decades. What's cruel is pretending to be one of us when you're clearly not and never have been. You live in a different world, Kate. A world the rest of us can only dream about. And I'm sorry if hearing that hurts your feelings, but it's the truth. Jane finally found her voice and jumped in, unable to stay silent any longer. Her face was flushed with emotion, her voice trembling slightly with a mixture of anger and distress. Denise, that's not fair. That's really not fair at all. Kate has been open about her struggles with anxiety and body image and the pressures of being in the public eye. She's talked about dealing with depression. She's been honest about her vulnerabilities and her challenges. To sit here and act like she's had this perfect problem-free life is not only inaccurate, it's dismissive of very real struggles that she's shared publicly at great personal cost. Many people have found comfort and strength in her openness about mental health. She didn't have to share those things, but she did, to help others. And this is how you treat her? Oh, please, Denise interrupted again, her voice rising. Everyone has anxiety. That's not special. That doesn't make her one of us. Kate's jaw tightened. Her eyes glistened, but she refused to let tears fall. I never claimed to be special, Denise. I've always tried to be honest and authentic in every interview I've done. But I won't sit here and be berated for having a successful career. I won't apologize for working hard and achieving my dreams. And I certainly won't let you make me feel guilty for it. The energy in the studio had shifted completely. The audience was now firmly on Kate's side. You could feel it in the room. Even the crew members were exchanging uncomfortable glances. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was painful to watch. Denise seemed to sense she was losing control of the situation, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. You know what, Kate? Maybe you should sit there and think about it. Maybe you should consider how it looks when you parade around in your designer outfits, talking about empowerment, while most women watching this can't even afford a new pair of shoes. Nadia had clearly had enough. She turned to Denise with an expression of disbelief. Denise, what are you doing? This is completely inappropriate. Kate is our guest. Denise whipped around to face Nadia. Don't you start with me. I'm doing what we're supposed to do on this show. I'm having an honest conversation. Or would you rather we just fawn all over her like every other show does? Kay spoke up, her voice firmer now. There's a difference between honest conversation and being hostile. This has crossed a line. But Denise wasn't listening. She turned back to Kate, her face flushed with anger. You know what I think? I think you came on this show expecting us to worship you like everyone else does. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but some of us aren't impressed by your awards or your fame. Some of us see right through the act. That was the moment Kate's patience finally ran out. She stood up slowly, her dignity intact, despite the humiliation she'd just endured. Her voice was calm, but there was steel in it. This isn't an act, Denise. This is my life. These are my experiences, and I don't need your approval or your validation. What I do need is basic respect, which clearly you're incapable of providing. The studio fell into absolute silence. Even Denise seemed momentarily stunned by Kate's response. The other panelists watched with a mixture of admiration and shock as Kate continued. I've sat through countless interviews over the years. I've been asked invasive questions about my body, my relationships, my personal life. I've been criticized and scrutinized in ways that most people couldn't even imagine. But I've always maintained my composure because I understand that it comes with the territory. What I won't tolerate is being invited somewhere under false pretenses, only to be ambushed and attacked for simply existing. Jane nodded vigorously. Kate, you're absolutely right. This shouldn't have happened. Kate gave Jane a small, appreciative smile before turning her attention back to Denise. I don't know what I did to offend you, Denise. I don't know why you felt the need to turn what should have been a pleasant conversation into this. But I do know that I won't stay here and subject myself to any more of your bitterness and resentment. Denise's face had gone from flushed to pale. She seemed to realize, perhaps for the first time, how badly she'd miscalculated. Kate, I think you're being overly sensitive. This is just how we do things here. It's called having a real conversation. Kate let out a short, humorless laugh. A real conversation involves mutual respect. It involves listening as well as speaking. It involves treating your guest like a human being, rather than a target for your frustrations. This wasn't a conversation, Denise. This was an attack, and I'm done. Nadia stood up as well, reaching out toward Kate. Kate, please don't go. Not like this. Some of us really did want to hear about your film and... But Kate shook her head gently. I appreciate that, Nadia. I really do. And Kay, Jane, thank you for trying to intervene. But I can't stay here. I won't give this platform any more of my time or energy. The producers were frantically signaling from behind the cameras, trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. The audience sat in stunned silence, many of them with their hands over their mouths in shock. This was live television. This was really happening. Denise made one last attempt to regain control, her voice taking on a false sweetness that was somehow worse than her previous hostility. Kate, come on now. Sit back down. We still have so much to talk about. Don't be so dramatic. Kate turned to face Denise one final time, and when she spoke, her words were measured and precise. Dramatic. You've spent the last several minutes attacking my character, my career, and my integrity. You've made assumptions about my life without knowing anything about my struggles or my journey. You've been dismissive, condescending, and outright hostile. And now you want to call me dramatic for refusing to tolerate it? She paused, letting her words sink in. The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing every nuance of her expression. Calm, composed, resolute. I've spent my entire career being told I'm too much or not enough. Too emotional or not emotional enough. Too outspoken or not outspoken enough. I've been judged for my weight, my choices, my relationships. I've been picked apart by tabloids and critics and people who think they know me but don't. And through it all, I've tried to remain gracious and professional. Kay was visibly emotional now, nodding along with Kate's words. Jane had her arms crossed, staring daggers at Denise. Nadia looked like she wanted to hug Kate, but didn't know if it would be welcome. Kate continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. But I draw the line at being disrespected in this way. I draw the line at being used as a punching bag for someone else's issues. You don't know me, Denise. You don't know my story. You don't know what I've been through to get where I am. And frankly, after today, I have no interest in sharing any of that with you. Denise opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For perhaps the first time in the entire confrontation, she was speechless. The other panelists looked relieved that Kate was finally standing up for herself, even as they seemed devastated that it had come to this. Kate began removing her microphone, her movements deliberate and unhurried. She wasn't running away. She wasn't storming off in a fit of rage. She was making a choice, calmly and clearly, to remove herself from a toxic situation. There was power in that, dignity in that. I came here today with an open heart and a genuine desire to connect with your audience, Kate said as she handed her microphone to a nearby crew member. I wanted to talk about a project I believe in, something that could inspire and empower women. Instead, I've been made to feel small and unwelcome. That's not my fault. That's not my failure. That's yours, Denise. The audience began to applaud. It started with just a few people, but quickly grew until nearly everyone in the studio was clapping for Kate. Some were even standing. It was an extraordinary moment, watching an audience turn against their own show to support a guest who had been so poorly treated. Denise looked around, clearly, rattled by the response. Oh, so now she's the victim? Unbelievable. But Kay had clearly had enough. She turned to Denise with barely contained fury. Yes, Denise, she is the victim here. She came on our show in good faith and you ambushed her. You were rude, aggressive, and completely out of line. You owe her an apology. Denise's eyes widened. I'm not apologizing for speaking my mind. That's what we do on this show. Jane shook her head in disgust. Speaking your mind is one thing. Being cruel is another. What you did today was cruel, Denise, and I'm ashamed to have been sitting here while it happened. Kate picked up her bag and straightened her shoulders. She looked at the three panelists who had tried, however imperfectly, to defend her. Thank you for your kindness. I hope this show finds its way back to lifting women up rather than tearing them down. Then, she looked at Denise one last time. I hope whatever is making you so angry gets resolved. I genuinely do. Because hurting other people won't heal whatever is broken inside you. With that, Kate Winslet walked off the Loose Women set. The cameras followed her as she moved through the studio, past the shocked crew members, past the producers scrambling to figure out what to do next. She walked with her head held high, every inch the professional she'd always been, even in the face of such unprovoked hostility. Back on the set, chaos erupted. Nadia turned to Denise with tears in her eyes. How could you do that? How could you treat someone that way? Denise crossed her arms defensively. I was just being honest. If she can't handle honest conversation, maybe she shouldn't do interviews. Kay stood up, gathering her own things. That wasn't honest conversation, Denise. That was a personal attack, and I won't be part of it anymore. I'm done with this segment. Jane followed suit. Me too. This isn't what I signed up for. The producers were shouting instructions, trying to get the show back on track, but it was too late. The damage was done. 3 of the 4 panelists had abandoned the set in solidarity with Kate, leaving Denise sitting alone at the table, still trying to justify her behavior to an audience that had completely turned against her. The cameras continued to roll as audience members began to leave, many of them calling out their support for Kate as they went. Some directed angry comments at Denise, telling her she should be ashamed of herself. The atmosphere in the studio had gone from uncomfortable to downright hostile. Denise tried one last time to address the camera, to spin the situation in her favor. I think what we've seen here today is exactly what's wrong with celebrity culture. They can't handle any criticism. They expect us to just bow down and... But her words were drowned out by the sounds of people walking out, crew members arguing with producers, and the general chaos that had consumed the studio. No one was listening to her anymore. No one cared about her justifications or her attempts to play the victim. Meanwhile, Kate Winslet walked out of the building and into the waiting car that would take her away from the disaster that had just unfolded. She took a deep breath, composing herself, refusing to let the tears that had been threatening finally fall. She had maintained her dignity throughout the entire ordeal. She had stood up for herself without losing her temper or stooping to Denise's level. She had shown the world exactly how to handle bullying and disrespect with grace and strength. Inside the studio, the 3 panelists who had walked off gathered in the green room, visibly shaken by what had transpired. Nadia was crying openly now. I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe we let it get that far. Jane poured herself a glass of water with shaking hands. We tried to stop it. We did try, but Denise wasn't listening. Kay sat down heavily in a chair. That poor woman. She came here expecting a normal interview and instead got verbally assaulted on live television. This is going to be everywhere. Everyone is going to be talking about this. And they were right. In that moment, phones all across the country were already lighting up with messages and posts about what viewers had just witnessed. The clip would be shared thousands of times within hours. People who hadn't even been watching live would soon know every detail of the confrontation. It would become one of those television moments that people reference for years to come. Not because it was entertaining or dramatic in a fun way, but because it was a masterclass in how not to treat another human being and how to stand up for yourself when faced with unprovoked cruelty. Back in the studio, Denise remained at the table, her bravado finally cracking as the reality of the situation began to sink in. The audience had left. Her fellow panelists had walked out. The producers were huddled in intense discussion, clearly trying to figure out how to handle the fallout. She sat there alone, the cameras still rolling, capturing every moment of her isolation. And for the first time since the interview began, Denise Welch was completely silent. There was nothing left to say. The damage had been done, and no amount of justification or deflection could undo what the entire country had just witnessed.